Hey guys, my name's Dustin DeFrates, and we have Chris Weir with us today. And today's a special episode, especially for me. We're here to do a few things. Our past 3 episodes were introducing the heart and electromagnetic frequency and the link to energy and even touching a little bit on the divine, right? And so today I'm extra excited about chatting through practical application, and not only practical application, but we're here to communicate Casa community development, Tomas's charity, and so we're very interested in helping everybody understand the path to leverage mind, body, and soul, and relate it to their own lives, right, Chris? And so, Chris, if you don't mind, maybe tell me a little bit of background and what we're here to do today.
Exactly. So today we want to kind of connect the wisdom from the Bible while also connecting that and rooting it in some of the concepts that we talked in the previous episodes, and realizing that a lot of the biblical wisdom is sort of that practical side that kind of links together what everything's going on in the energetic side. So to kind of recap of what we talked about that the body is electromagnetic. And so our thoughts are electrical, our heart is magnetic. We need both of them. They create an aura. Our mitochondria is the way that we funnel all the energy. Our mitochondria vitally are always listening to us and always making these micro adjustments to our DNA and to the way that we even perceive the world. So even our thoughts are going to slightly change based on every action that we do, every word that we speak, every food that we eat. It's just always responding to our state of being in the current moment. It's not responding to our past. It's not responding to our future. And then lastly, that our heart creates these magnetic imprints on into our body, into the water of our cells, and basically that's how we will draw in the thoughts of others. That's how we start to connect to everybody else is through our hearts. And so that's kind of the recap. And then lastly, that our body also needs these different minerals. If our body is electromagnetic, well, we need different minerals and different ions to create positivity, negativity, and oxygen is everything that kind of flows everything together.
That's great. So I'm excited about this one because a lot of those things are very high level, especially if you haven't been introduced to these things. And so I'm excited to communicate our opportunity. And, we're talking about the Bible today. And, I was raised a Christian, church on Wednesday night, Sunday morning and Sunday night, toured the United States and Mexico in an acting, singing choir. And so religion has always been a part of my life, but spirituality is a relatively recent part of my life. And so what I'm most excited about, I went through a period of time where, I went to college and I took a geology class and that made me have some questioning of faith, I guess, especially in the context of you go and look at, some of the Grand Canyon a little bit farther north of us right now, right? And it's pretty clear to me that the earth wasn't made in 7 days, and some of those literal interpretations of the Bible may not have to be as literal as the way that I was raised in a Southern Baptist church in the Bible belts of Illinois. So I'm excited to talk about this, but I also want to suggest that the Bible has so many truths and wisdoms from whatever faith, whatever walk of life, and a lot of these religions and spirituality are tied together very similarly and have the same principles. So whether you're a man and a woman of faith or not, I think that all of these tie together in that there's a roadmap for mind, body, and soul and your connection to the divine and spirituality and just feeling good whether you have that belief system or not, And so exactly. I'm excited to talk about that roadmap. So can we get into it or tell me?
Yeah. And Dustin, I just want to add on is that we're all actually truly men and women of faith, whether we know it or not, because we're subject to these spiritual laws, whether we believe in them, whether we don't believe them. Our mitochondria are always going to be listening. Our heart's always going to be beating and creating this magnetic field, right? We can't tell our spleen to stop working. We can't tell our calf to just disappear. And so there are these laws that will apply to us no matter what. And the Bible is one way to get those laws into words, and we can understand words better. But like you were saying, many of these faiths, they all stick together. They all apply the laws of spirituality, and whether that's Buddhism, Confucius, Quetzalcoatl, many traditions and many cultures all across the world, they have their own way of explaining them. But as far as our own history, as far as the application, today we're speaking to a Western audience, and we definitely want to use the Bible as a way to connect. And also, there is just so much wisdom that we can all glean and all learn as much as we can.
I love that. And but before the last thing that I'd say is I appreciate the Bible as God's truth, right? But then I would also suggest that the language is a limiter for the human to God experience, right? So there's no possible way that, I'm talking about the literal translations of the Bible, or people that might not believe in the Bible specifically, or even consider themselves a man or woman of faith, because they say, oh, that can't be true, or that's not true. And so there's truth to everything that has ever been stated, and the Bible has been around for a really long time. And so there's especially some truth. So whether you have that belief system or not, I'm excited to communicate about these truths, because I know from both the background of Christianity and my spiritual practices that these things resonate. And I love the idea of the mitochondria and the energy and being in the present and how that all applies. So let's get into it.
Yeah. So the first quote, we're kind of going to read some different quotes from the Bible, and then we'll dissect the lesson after that. So the first one here is Matthew 7:7. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be open to you. For everyone who seeks, and the one who seeks, for everyone who asks, receives, and the one who seeks, finds. And to the one who knocks, the door will be opened. And so I chose this one first because this one kind of encompasses everything that we're talking about as far as the body and the mitochondria and how energy flows. And so the big lesson here is that we need to take the first step in the present moment. Nothing will change without us changing either an action, a thought pattern, a belief, a feeling. We need to take even the smallest step, right? We need to ask, we need to seek, we need to knock, and then the door is open, then we receive, then we find, right?
I love that. And so that's faith. We kind of, whether you believe this thing or not, some of these truths are truths no matter what. And so I love that the one who seeks finds, right? So you have to have a belief that it's out there in order to find it. You haven't seen it yet. You're seeking, but you have to believe that it's there in order to find it. And if you take action, we're talking about mind, body, and soul, right? So we're going to call the knock the action, and we're going to call the faith and the belief that it's out there seeking the soul, right? And so with those two things, you're able to have happiness, right? And you're able to stay in that present moment.
Exactly. We're basically attuning our mitochondria. We're attuning our heart to that vibration of what is already out there. And if we have that energetic vibrational match to whatever is going to happen in the future, then we seek the kingdom, we seek coherence, and the rest is going to be taken care of. Then we don't have to worry. We don't have to have the fear. We don't have to have the anxiety, because it's more of a knowing. I know that if I seek the kingdom, I know if I come into coherence, that nothing can be bad, because my vibration says it's so. My body, my energetic says it's so. But this is often one where we have a limited mind in what we perceive as what can be good for us or not. And so sometimes when maybe we get sick, maybe when we lose money, maybe when, let's say, a pet dies, and we have a hard time even determining if that was a good thing for us, because we can only see the negatives in it. And we need to remind ourselves always that even if we lose the money, even if a pet dies, even if traffic is slow today, whatever it might be, that there is always some reason, always something that is good for us if we're first seeking the kingdom. If we're maintaining our heart coherence and our brain coherence, and we're taking that next action, we're staying in the present moment, something good will come out of it. And that's the kind of that big lesson of Matthew 7:7.
I love that. So I think the only thing that I would like to communicate in there is that, it's tough to wake up every day in the trials of life and wake up with the same renewed faith that you had yesterday. Yesterday was a good day. Today, it's a rough day. And so there's waves in life, right? And so I always like to use the analogy that if you're at the bottom of the wave, all you got to do is get just high enough to see that there's a top, right? They're just barely enough to say, okay, well, I just got to get a little bit further, and that becomes that trigger. So I'd like to encourage everybody that if seek and find and believe, and when you get stuck in the funk, go back to mind, body, or soul, right? There's an opportunity to get yourself out of that funk by going to church, going and doing push-ups, going and reading your favorite kind of book, mind, body, soul, right? And so the opportunity to stay in that faith, stay in that seeking, stay in that, you mentioned gratitude, and we're going to get into gratitude in a little bit, but stay in that mindset. It's difficult, but if you get out of it, go back to one of those three things: mind, body, and soul.
Exactly. And I think it's important to remember if somebody is having, say, negative thoughts, and that's really starting to send you in a loop, sometimes all we need to do is just not think. Even just for a second or two, we just focus on our breath, focus on anything else, focus on the color of the screen, whatever it might be, and that can take us out of it. Or if we've been abusing our body, maybe there a lot of drugs or, whatever you might be partaking in. Sometimes it's just as simple as, okay, I'm going to drink a glass of spring water. I'm going to get some hydration into my body. I'm going to breathe deeply for a couple seconds. Exactly what you're saying. That builds the momentum, and now we can take the bigger actions. We don't need to take it all at once.
I love that.
Absolutely. So the next one we have here is Matthew 9:17. And this says, "And no one puts new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise the skins burst. The wine spills out, and the skins are ruined. No, they put the new wine into fresh wineskins, and both are preserved." And so the lesson here is that when you are taking new actions and new thoughts and new beliefs, it's hard to put that into the old body, your old way of living, your old life, your old actions. It's tough to add a new action while still maintaining the old action, right? You're trying to break a drug addiction and you're adding in all these new actions, but then you still have the thought pulsing through your mind of, I want to do this drug. Well, now you have a mismatch of how Jesus put it, the new wineskin or the new wine in the old wineskin, yes. Right? And that's not a mismatch. It's going to burst.
I understand. So that's kind of I'm making the joke, that old wineskins, right? We don't use wineskins anymore, but the opportunity for us to translate what that means, from language from a long time ago into today's modern society. I love how you put that. And so there's a kind of similar to what we were talking about before, that mind, body, soul, and the faith. And so if you let's use the addiction to drugs example. If you are that, and that is where your current state is, then the way that you create the new wine skin, the body, is to believe that it can be so, right? So if you put yourself, Dr. Joe Dispenza, you put yourself into that future environment, right? If you believe that, I might still have some of these cravings and addictions inside of my old body, but I believe my new body is out there and I'm headed towards that new body, then it creates that foundational base that allows you to create the new wineskin for the new wine. Is that a fair analogy?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a fair analogy, and everything that we do just has to be matching, right? We don't want to take our old patterns, even if it's in the mind, even if it's whatever simple actions, right? We need to let that go.
I understand more what you're saying now. Yeah, so then you're the residents, and so you can't misrepresent your daily path and still destroy your body, or you can't,
Exactly.
believe that you're on this right path, or you're going to do the right thing, or the money's going to come in, or the relationships are going to come in while you're struggling in this other thing. So both of these things have to align in coherence, is what you're saying.
Exactly. And an easy example for our listeners is, let's say you want to become more meditative, more calm. But then at the same time, you're saying, okay, I believe I can be more calm. I believe I can do these things. And so I'm going to start meditating 30 minutes a day. Now, prior to meditating for your 30 minutes a day, you just smoked a pack of cigarettes and you drank 3 energy drinks, right? Versus maybe the person who watched the birds and watched the sunset and drank some spring water and got some sea salt in the body. Well, one person is going to have new wine in the old wineskin, right? Like, okay, I'm adding in this meditation. It's not going to be as effective. It's not going to be, you're not going to see it work as well versus the person who prepared and gave coherence to it. And now everything's in alignment. Now you do have a calmer life.
I'm tracking that one perfectly. Thank you for the additional explanation. So let's, rewriting. I had a thought of rewriting your narrative or taking control of your story, and so that's where many I struggle with is that, if I'm not in that moment, if I'm at the bottom of the trough, if I'm there, it's very hard to get all of those things to go together. But if you can tell yourself a story and you can believe it to be true, then you can get into that coherence. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, I like that. Cool. Let's do another one.
All right. So Matthew 18:3, and all these quotes are going to be from the gospel. So Matthew 18:3 states, "Truly I tell you," he said, Jesus, "unless you turn and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever humbles himself like this child, this one is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever welcomes one child like this in my name welcomes me." And so this one is, if you just read this one's a little bit tough to understand. You might think it's just about helping children, but what does this truly mean? And becoming like little children, if we've ever watched children, we just know how present they are. They are in the moment. And they don't necessarily have expectations of what should be or what shouldn't be, how much things cost, how much they don't cost, what's the timeline of this project. They're not thinking about these things. They're in the present moment. And everything kind of just works out for a lot of these children who remain present. Well, they get fed and they get to play and they get to do everything, right? The world kind of takes care of them. And this is one of those powerful moments because if we truly remain present like little children and we're not constantly thinking about the future, well, I'm going to need these resources, I'm going to need this person, I don't know what's going to happen here, I'm stressed out about this, I got a lot going on in my life. Well, we're living in the future, right? Or we're bringing those old wineskins, as we talked about in that last quote, we're bringing on all these old limiting beliefs that are starting to weigh on us, right? We're maybe taking that body that was worn down, and now we think we have a worn down body. Now we don't think we're confident when we speak, whatever it might be. Maybe we tell ourselves, I'm just not good at this. I'm just not good at shooting the basketball. I just wasn't good at it. And so now that's going to affect my current shot. Yeah. Right? And so oftentimes we're living in the past, we're living in the future, and we don't even know it. It's not like we're intentionally trying to be out of the present moment. It's just oftentimes we forgot how deeply it is to even feel like in the present moment. Most of us can't. We understand what happened to us as children, but we don't have that same feeling again. And it's very hard to replicate as well. And so this is what Jesus is saying here, is we need to be that level of presence, that level of in the present moment, in the now moment. And if we are to be able to get to that level, then everything is going to happen to us. That's how we enter the kingdom of heaven.
Well, I love that bridge there, specifically because of the mind, body, soul, right? So if you conceptualize that among birth and death, right? There's these bursts of DMT, right? And so you have the capability to, for that moment, get it. Your body is designed to help you seek God, find the God state, right? Find a oneness with God. And so if you have the capability to break down the ego, which is what I believe DMT has the capability to do, is to just pull yourself away from the conscious and the subconscious, the conscious being the body and the control and the belief systems and the narratives that we tell ourselves. If you have the capability to separate yourself from that, then you do have a direct link with God, right? And so that is what the child is expressing, right? He doesn't have all of the stories and the negatives and the baggage. He doesn't have all the baggage bringing to the table. So, Andres, my 4-year-old, walks around with his happy grin every single morning of every single day. And so, and it doesn't ever change because he doesn't have any expectations of what should or should not be. And so I love the idea of children, and for me personally, children give me energy. Like when I'm around children, I can feel that presence or that godlike state, the less no ego state, right? And so the capability to be like that child as a path to heaven, right, makes a lot of sense to me, because the more we're in ourselves, more we're in our body, the more we're in our own thoughts, ruminating. I say depression comes from the belief of the past, or what the past should have been, or disappointment in the past, and anxiety comes with expectations of the future, and then just general rumination or the inability to be in that present moment and constantly be thinking about those two things will destroy you. And that's the opposite of what God wants for us. That's the basics, yeah?
Absolutely. You're fighting a battle with your own brain, with your own mind, and that is the toughest battle that we'll ever face. You will lose if you don't control it. Yeah. It is one of the hardest opponents because it meets you at your level. It sees all your thoughts. It becomes very difficult. And so last part on this quote is I kind of want to tie this back to Genesis and Adam and Eve.
Okay.
Right? Because just like as you were telling your story about your kid, Andres, I was just thinking, maybe you had a brownie splatter on your face and a kid thinks it's the funniest thing in the world. They love it. That's like, oh, wow, dad's being hilarious, right? But if you come onto the podcast with maybe some brownie splatter on your face, you're like, this is extremely embarrassing. My whole mood is ruined. I'm not as happy. Like, I look ridiculous. And so it's kind of like with Adam and Eve, and that God was... He said, "Who told you were naked?" He wasn't. He was more upset that now they deemed being naked as worse than not. And so oftentimes it's like those kids. They might see that on the face. They might do whatever. They might get something on their shirt. They don't care how much the shirt costs. They didn't care about if they need to replace it or not. If it looks ridiculous, it's like, oh, that's actually kind of funny.
Yeah.
Just everything going on. It's funny. They perceive it that way. And then so shall it be as well.
I love that. So being in the present moment, and just one more thing from the science level, it's I was listening to a podcast actually yesterday on a mountain bike, and lower serotonin. We're trying to tie these things into the practical application and what you can do about it. So if you have lower serotonin levels, then your brain tends to ruminate more and more and more. You're stuck in one specific section of the brain. I don't remember what that section is, but then higher serotonin levels allows you to let things go easier. You're able to be in the present moment because you're not so concerned about that. So if you can you give us any examples of how you might increase your serotonin levels so that you can get into the present moment now? Do you have any examples?
Yeah, exactly. And what Dustin was referring to was the default mode network. And so the default mode network, it basically it sets our default behaviors when we're not actively being present. It has a certain script that it's going to follow. And when we have higher serotonin levels, we absolutely are able to turn it down, right? Whereas we can think of when it can be super loud when we don't have serotonin. And so the important thing with serotonin is to realize that it's triggered by your retina and your eyes. And so when we get direct sunlight into our eyes, serotonin, like any biogenic amine, has a benzene ring in it. And this benzene ring acts like as a photon trap. And we can think of a photon trap as just a way to absorb the sunlight, right? We don't need to get overly complex jargon. But if we are able to absorb the sunlight, and then the other part that we need for serotonin is just some of these micronutrients that we can get from different animal products and different fruits and vegetables. And so just maintaining a healthy diet as well as getting outside and breathing fresh air. And there's a difference between the fresh air and stagnant air that breathes through you versus when you have to breathe all the air and you have to manually provide all the flow, right? And so if you just do those three things, your serotonin levels, they're going to respond in a very strong way.
Nutrient, breath, and sun.
Sun.
Yep. And then I think it was, I do a lot of things, we do a lot of things, but I think in one of our episodes, we actually talked about the example of a mother sending the kids outside. Did we talk about that in one of our episodes?
Oh, we might have.
We might have. So when the kids are going crazy, they're in the house, they're running around, they're stuck in a loop. They can't figure out how to not be crazy. And so mom says either right, and the kids, that just accelerates the kids. It doesn't help anything, right? As opposed to saying, go outside and play. And then the kids come back and they say, they come back completely calm, totally normal, because that they got the sunlight, they got the air, they got the, hopefully they're getting the nutrients in their breakfast and lunches, but they got those two things that allow them to reset the pattern that they had previously. And that's what we're really talking about here. If you can reset the pattern, if you can be in the present moment, then you can become one with God, you can become present.
Yeah, and it sounds so simple. I just needed to go outside. But if we look at our daily lives, especially as we get older and we have jobs and different commitments, how often are we really being like, I need a 3-minute break to step outside, guys? We're saying, you need a 3-minute break? What are you, like a child? Mm-hmm. It's like,
put judgment on that.
Right,
yeah.
We all put judgments on it. It's not something that most jobs or companies prioritize at all. Nobody's saying, okay, I need to give my employees a 3-minute break every hour just to reset their default mode network and keep their serotonin high. No, we look at that as inefficiency. That's not productive. And so oftentimes we're staying indoors all day, or we're just constantly going from one environment indoors. I went from my job straight to my car, straight to the gym, straight back home. And oftentimes we're not even spending 1 minute in an hour outside, and that can be just very detrimental.
Totally agree. I like it. Yeah, let's do another one.
All right. So moving on to Luke 6:13 or Luke 6:37. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. And this verse here really ties back the way that the heart and the mitochondria operate in the present moment. So our heart and mitochondria, they just become a reflection of who we are being in this now moment. And so if we start judging, our heart's going to start attuning the rest of our cells to be in a state of judgment. Our mitochondria is going to do the same with our DNA, and that's going to reverberate. Our heart then connects with other people who are going to bring in judgment. And that's kind of the concept of quantum entanglement, and that everything is connected. And that's another important concept of the Bible is, okay, if we found ourselves being judging, we need to forgive ourselves. We can't beat ourselves up. We can't even judge ourselves for judging something else. And we just continue the loop, right? We break it up by being in forgiveness. And our heart and mitochondria, they have to vibrate in a certain way. So in last episode, we even talked about how even a thought is going to be affected by the vibrations of our heart, because that magnetic pull is going to start pulling electricity in different ways. It's going to start firing off different neural pathways. Not only in our brain has neural networks, but we have neural networks all throughout our body. Our heart has one of the biggest ones. And so our brain is more like receiving messages from our heart, from the mitochondria in our heart, which also has the largest density of mitochondria. Very interesting, right? And so for us to even think these judging thoughts, it must have meant that we were judging already within ourselves. So how could we judge something when it's already in ourselves? Can I condemn something? I've already been condemned.
There's a lot of philosophy that goes into that, right? So we are what we eat, we are what we do, we are what we everything, right? And so I am the biggest critic of myself by far. I'm constantly ruminating. We'll use that word again, and maybe a couple more times throughout this episode, right? But I'm constantly ruminating on whether I did good enough in that moment, or what I could have done better, or in past experiences what I could have done better, or in future experiences have I prepared myself enough, right? And so that in the end, I'm judging and I'm reflecting myself into the past and the future. But then I can tell when I'm in that state, and then I go into a meeting with an employee, I can tell that I am more judgmental if I'm in that mood, as opposed to when I get out of a cold plunge and I go to a meeting right afterwards. I'm not in that mood at all, and everything flows so much better, and everything feels so much better, and that's because you're able to reset yourself. And so I think that's what we continue to talk about, is that reset, the being present in the moment, and how to get into that moment when you're not in that moment. Yeah.
Exactly. And the big concept to remember here is that we don't actually control our thoughts. Our thoughts are a product of our vibration. So when you are in that high vibrational state, you will see the good in your employee. You will look at, and you were looking at the good inside of you too. You're like, wow, I was proud. I just did that cold plunge, right? Versus when you were judging yourself, okay, now you're going to find you're just in the judging mood. It's not like you just stop at yourself. You are in the judging vibration. And so now that, we might have that unlucky timing with the employee, but now that employee, now it's going to be projected on the employee. If it's not projected on the employee, maybe it's the car, maybe it's the traffic, maybe it's the weather. It could be a million different things, but we're going to find ways to judge it. And that's always how it works, is our thoughts are going to always be determined by the vibration and the coherence that our heart, our brain, our thyroid, all of these energy centers within our body, if they're in a lot of coherence, then we simply won't even have those thoughts. They can't exist.
I love that, and I just love tying these things to the science of it.
Yes.
I'm if I can't see it, I have a hard time believing it as a factor of truth, and that's why I'm more excited about God than I've ever been, because I can see these things all of a sudden. Yeah,
yes.
And then it's a magical transition. So I just want to encourage everybody that some of these things are a little bit high level, but it's simple to really communicate. You think happy thoughts, figure out a way to think happy thoughts, and happy thoughts will continue. Figure out a way to do something good for yourself, and that will continue.
Exactly. And this is just one bridge. This is why we're doing this episode, because sometimes it's easier to hear it from the biblical perspective, plus to see it from the biological perspective, plus to see real life examples. It just all starts to get easier to hear, because if you haven't lived a life of coherence, it's very difficult for Dustin or I to be able to tell you, like, oh, you're definitely in coherence. Great work. It's right. It's not easy. So unless you've felt it, and it's one of those things that you're able to feel more and more every day. It's like a muscle. You need to build it up. Many times you're not going to instantly shift into this total state of coherence. Sometimes I had to add a little bit of minerals. I had to add this meditation. I had to stop myself one time. But that all builds, and that's eventually how we create that beautiful state of coherence and find the kingdom of heaven within us versus outside of us.
Well, I love how that bridges the next one, is gratitude. There's different ways to reset. There's different ways to tell yourself a story, believe in the future, believe that you're a different person in the future than you are today, and all of those things come to be. But in that present moment, gratitude is one of the fastest ways to be able to get into coherence and in that state of love, breaking down the ego, breaking down the body, control, all of these things, right? So go ahead and give us our next verse, and I'm excited. This one's my favorite.
Yeah, so on the theme of gratitude, Luke 8:16. No one, after lighting a lamp, covers it with a basket or puts it under a bed, but puts it on a lampstand, so that those who come in may see its light. For nothing is concealed that won't be revealed, and nothing hidden that won't be known and brought to light. Therefore, take care how you listen. For whoever has, more will be given to him, and whoever does not have, even what he thinks he has, will be taken away from him.
There's a lot there.
There is a lot here. There is a lot here. So I want to start off with, for nothing is concealed that won't be revealed. So if you have a certain vibration in your heart, the way that quantum physics works, the way that energy works, if there is a certain vibration, if you've been judging in your heart, you will have to face at least one judging circumstance. Now that's it. But you've already set that into motion. And this is where Jesus, knowing this great wisdom, nothing hidden won't be known and brought into the light that we can see into our outer world, right? Everything that is hidden within us will be revealed. So that's very important. And he follows that up with saying, therefore, take care how you listen. Because we're always listening to the world too. We can instantly reduce the power of even those judging circumstances that we might have to face if we face it with gratitude. That instantly neutralizes all of that. If we're always listening from gratitude and love, and we have this certainty of knowing that it's going to benefit us in some way, all of a sudden everything becomes something that we can look forward to, right? It just becomes that positive loop. But we have to know it, and we have to be careful how we listen, because as soon as we stop actively listening, our default mode network that we just talked about, it's going to start ramping up. Maybe our serotonin gets lower, maybe our mood starts to decrease, and all of a sudden these thoughts, these negative actions, they get louder and louder and louder until it's brought into the light.
That's right. Yeah. So, okay. So then taking, you can't... You are what you eat. You're a mirror of yourself. Your judgment will create judgment. Hate will create hate. Love will create love. Gratitude will create gratitude. And so let's go into that last section of that verse then. This is my favorite part.
Yes. So for whoever has, more will be given to him. And whoever does not have, even what he thinks he has, will be taken away from him.
It's deep.
It is deep.
You want to go deeper? You want me to go into it? I love this one. I love this one.
Yeah, take it away, Dustin.
So when it's that belief. So communicating into the future, feeling, Joe Dispenza, I don't know if you ever listened to some of his meditations,
Absolutely.
but you can feel into yourself, feel into your future, and so when you believe those things to be true, that you're actually taking on the perception internally of gratitude for that feeling, right? Because I have a dream to purchase a jet so that I have the freedom to be able to take my family anywhere in the world anytime I want, right? And so that feeling of being on that jet, I'm grateful that I have that jet, and that creates that energetic, that vibration, that creation, the creator. I am a creator, right? And I'm able to create these things by my thoughts and by that belief. So when you talk about the future, but then you talk about being grateful for what can be in the future, you can, whether those things are true today or not, allow yourself to be grateful for things even when life is difficult, right? So that's where I think it all bridges, is that in the present moment, if you're grateful for, there's so many things to be grateful for, right? Anything that you can ever imagine. I'm grateful that I woke up today. I'm grateful that I was able to eat. I'm grateful that I have this amazing coffee to drink. I'm grateful that I can afford organic coffee that doesn't poison my body, and all these different things that you can be grateful for, right? If you don't have any of those things, you will still find something. And so what I wanted to communicate, especially from the practical application of it, is there's different practices to become what you want to be. And if you want to be grateful, then you have to be in that mindset. And so I'll in the story notes, I'll go ahead and give some of the meditations that I do on my way to school with my children every day. We used to have a 5-minute one that I'll put in the story notes. That one's a little bit more boring than the Snoop Dogg affirmations gratitude meditation, right? So it's Snoop Dogg rapping, and he's, talking about being grateful beautiful. And we listen to this every single morning. And Snoop Dogg, he intros the lines, "There is no one better to be than myself." And my kids are in the back, "There is no one better to be than myself," And so like that changes their day every day. Diego, Andres wakes up with a smile every single morning, but Diego, he's more of he's ruminating. He's thinking a lot. He's very much in the past and thinking about the future. And so when Diego comes out of there, you can see his mentality, his presence change. And so it's a beautiful thing.
All of that's absolutely incredible. And then and it's exactly what you're saying. And if we want to go back to the jet example, you're creating that gratitude of the freedom for your family, and you're expressing that. And the way that our heart works is not only might you get the jet, but you're going to also experience other scenarios where that feeling shows up as well. And it starts to show up in the mundane. It starts to show up in the big things. It starts to show up in the small things. All of a sudden there's pleasant surprises. Things are just starting to work out. And even though what might have started out as a thought of I'm grateful for this jet, and nothing wrong with wanting material things. And it's actually very important to have these desires as well. Definitely. But it's just beautiful that we also see it start to show up in different ways. Maybe a loving moment in the sunset, because when you're in that vibration, kind of tying it back to the last story, I just love how all these stories tie together. If we're in that vibration of gratitude for the freedom, we're just going to experience more and more opportunities where your family has more and more freedom. And we're going to be more and more grateful for it. Whoever has, more will be given to them, right? And then kind of on that flip side, whoever does not have even what he thinks, and I want to stress the word thinks, even what he thinks he has will be taken away from him. Because if we truly are just this embodiment of God, and our sacred hearts are a way to send out these vibrations of these energetic pulses, if everything in the world is energy, which we just discussed how it was, how our hearts and how our body works, right? In the last episode, very important if you haven't listened to it. Now we start to understand that we don't actually have anything. We don't actually even control our thoughts, because we don't even own our own thoughts, right? We don't own our own body. Even these things that we think we own, we don't really own, right? Can I tell my calf to disappear? Can I tell my spleen to stop working? Can I tell my blood to just freeze for a few seconds? Can't do any of it. We don't actually even own our own body. Now we own the sensations of it, right? We can feel the sensations, and we can always do something with that. But whatever we think we have, if we think that the money is always too little, if we think that our health is always fading, if we're always looking at it like, oh, my knee hurts every single day, and we think about that every single day, oh, I'm just getting older. The only time that you actually start to change is when you break those thought patterns, but it requires investigating things that you don't even think twice about. Because if you get to 65 and you start thinking your knee, oh, wow, now my knee hurts. I'm 65. I can't recover. Well, your knee's going to hurt for the rest of your life. And it's actually going to get worse. Yeah. Because you're asking whoever has, if I have knee pain, more knee pain is going to be given to you. That's just the way it works.
Huh. There's so many different angles to go on that one. So I guess for again Diego, people will come up to him and do very, very nice things, and I always try to call that out and ask him, Diego, why did that just happen? Why did that person treat you like that? What was behind that? And I don't know, Daddy, but like it is a reflection of him being in that mood where his innocence, his childlike state, his happiness, his passion for knowledge or growth is reflected in his eyes and his presence, and people want to give to him. And so I love the idea of the positive side of it being that when you're in that state, you are going to get that. And then I don't like focusing on the negative for the reasons that we're talking about, but that is an absolute truth. If you believe that something is going to be something, your knee is in that example, or I'm not good enough, or I don't have enough money. If you tell yourself you don't have enough money, you don't have enough money. That's it, And so it's if you can reframe the story, if you can be in the present moment and you can say, I have enough money to have this thought.
Exactly.
You can just switch it like that, So it's an amazing. I have a couple. No, please tell me.
Oh, I was just gonna say in the money scenario, there was a time in my life I was about 24, and I just kept telling myself, "Wow, I don't have enough right now." And during that week, it was my car broke down twice, costly repairs, recurring bills that I hadn't even thought about. All of a sudden, the IRS is coming out with a tax bill like, oh, we missed something 2 years ago. And I'm like, wow, yeah, this is, but I didn't know any of this now. And it just put me in that state worse. It's like, wow, I thought I had a little bit now, but now I have all these repairs. I have everything going on. Now I definitely don't have enough. Right. And you just start sending these cascades, because then you get mad about the car breaking down. Then you get mad about maybe receiving a bill 2 years later. You get mad about all these different things, and it just starts to cascade. And so, that's like a real life example that happened to me that I just wanted to share.
Yeah. It was taken away. As soon as
away.
You go the negative direction, then okay, well, your body is telling you, your energy is telling you, the flow of energy is telling you that you are not deserving of this from the biblical references.
Yeah, exactly. I thought I had money problems, and like Jesus is saying, whoever has the money problems, more will be given to you. Okay, in a way, I was asking for it.
It's crazy, and it makes me smile just because it's so true, and it's such a simple concept, but such a difficult practice in life. And so I think that's what I want to encourage everybody, from the science and neuro pathways, right? The ability to, I think, the study that women who have children later in life live longer, right? That drive to want to see your children and your children's children's future is a driver, right? So it's hard to have the strength of character and mind to break the patterns that existed yesterday, because those are the strongest patterns. Your default mode, your default mode in your body is going to be your strongest pattern. So if your default mode is this, the hardest thing in the world is to get out of that and to create those new neural pathways. But as a product of being a very, very negative, controlling, still controlling, still have nuances or remnants of those things. But from my past life to today, the difference is magnificent. I mean, the ability for me to wake up I use the example of a divorce that I'm going through that certainly could be easier. And so if I can wake up and not be concerned about those things on a daily basis, then I have solved for what was in the past where my daily practice was fear and running from things and hiding, as opposed to saying, it's not going to affect me tomorrow because I believe so.
Exactly. Yeah. And kind of building onto that, that's exactly right. It's not going to affect you tomorrow because you believe that. So, and one of the quickest ways sometimes is if we truly believe that everything is happening for us, which I truly believe, we start to realize that oftentimes it's some of those pain that is like a reset. We have to feel the pain because now it allows us to be in gratitude. So like in your example, that there's definitely painful times during a divorce, and there's all these memories that need to be cleansed, and you're creating this new life, but now all of a sudden it allows new gratitude in, right? In my scenario, when I was 24 and I was having all of these things happen to me, well, all of a sudden now I'm grateful not to get a bill this week.
Yeah.
And even just that simple act of gratitude, right? Oh, I'm glad my car didn't break down twice this week. It's almost this sarcastic, you're kind of laughing it off like, what, I'm glad nothing went wrong today. But even that state, even that pain it's serving us in some way because it also allows us to get into gratitude. And it's like we've talked about in previous episodes. If you put yourself temporarily into pain, let's say like a fast, the body naturally wants to eat. All of a sudden, that next bite you take, whether it's just an apple or a strawberry, it just feels magical because it's the first thing that you've eaten in a while. When we put ourselves in this temporary state of darkness, it's very powerful because even that pain creates a large amount for our mitochondria to now be tuned to this gratitude.
We live in Phoenix. The Phoenix rises from the ashes, and to tie these things into all faiths, all belief systems, all truths, right? That's the nature of it. There's a Buddhist, those who love the pain of the mountain, like the analogy being climbing the mountain. When you get to the top of the mountain, you're going to get the feeling of being accomplished the mountain, and the pain that you go through is the creation of opportunity, the rising from the ashes, right? And so I love that it actually transitions in the next one perfectly, but I love that that we have the capability to take those negatives and turn them into a positive. And again, it's just about changing your story and being in that present moment and being able to say, I will become a better person because these things are happening to me.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. So like you were saying, let's roll right into this next one then. So Luke 12:54. This is Jesus speaking. He also said to the crowds, when you see a cloud rising in the west, right away you say, a storm is coming. And so it does. And when the south wind is blowing, you say, it's going to be hot. And it is. Hypocrites, you know how to interpret the appearance of the earth and the sky, but why don't you know how to interpret this present time? And so this one is a very simple message. So when the clouds are coming, okay, the storm is happening, right? We already know that A causes B. We already know if the south wind is blowing, it's going to be hot. Cause and effect. A causes B. Yet, we have no idea how to interpret the present time. If I'm grateful and loving, A, that I'm going to have grateful and loving experiences. B, there's that match between the two. But very often we're saying, I don't know what's going to happen. Like, I got to be a realist. I got to be prepared for all these different scenarios. I don't know what's happening, or we're sending conflicting signals. Our actions say one thing, our thoughts say another, our heart's feeling another thing. We're having chaos. We're not only sending out A, B, and C, we're scattering everything, right? We have to remain present, and this is the power of intention. When we interpret physical things as one way, they happen that way. We don't feel the south wind and then say there's going to be a storm, or we don't see a cloud rising in the west and then say it's going to be hot. No, we know the cloud rising in the west means there's going to be a storm. We know the south wind means it's going to be hot. And just so likewise, we have to learn how to interpret the present time. And Jesus, he's being very clear here. Why don't you know how to interpret this present time? We don't need to interpret what happened in the past. We don't need to interpret what will happen in the future, right? We need to interpret the present time because we need to be careful always. Our mitochondria is listening. Our heart's listening. The energy is constantly shifting. Our DNA is constantly shifting. Everything is constantly shifting to who we are being in this present time. And so it's so important to just take even a few moments every now and then to just recenter and interpret the time how we wish to interpret it.
How we wish, that's an important point, because a lot of people will interpret based upon past judgments and future expectations, right? So like interpreting it towards the theory of gratitude or grateful and being grateful, or abundance and not the opposites expectations, and is very, very important in that line.
Right. I love what you said there. Oftentimes we think we know we're interpreting the present time, but actually we're taking the past judgments or the future expectations. Oh, I'm doing this because of the money. I'm doing this because I want to get that girl, or whatever it is, and we're not actually doing it because of the present time. We're doing it for some future expectation. We're doing it because in the past, this is what was real to me, right? When somebody tells you to be real, okay, they're saying, well, actually be who you were in the past, right? Because the past can be a great predictor of results just because we're not changing anything from the past. The past would be a terrible predictor of results if we were constantly changing it in stronger and stronger ways. It would actually be terrible, right?
Yep. It's I think of a seesaw in this thing, So like going to the past does help your understanding of the future. Thinking into the future does help you create the gratitude of the present moment, right? And so there's that balance, right? And so if you go too far on the seesaw this way, it crashes into the ground, right? Without the counterbalance, right? And if you go too far this way, it crashes into the ground without that counterbalance. So being in the present moment is kind of like teetering on the middle. You do want to believe in the future. You do want to have truths, and you do want to see the past. But if you go too far into the past, or if you go too far into the future, right? And so the opportunity to try to stay in that present moment and is right here. And so the intention, the power of intention, the capability to say, this is what I intend to communicate to myself in that present moment becomes the critical function.
Exactly. And we haven't necessarily discussed this yet, but our heart has two spirals. One's the Fibonacci spiral, one's the Lucas spiral. And it's not important to know the math here, but basically the Fibonacci spiral takes the present moment and the present number and the past number, and it creates the future number, right? Well, we don't have to think about this as math. We can think about this, say, as time. It takes the present moment, it takes the previous moment, creates the future. And the Lucas, it has a different starting point, but you can think of it as basically taking the future moment and the present moment, and it's helped bridging the past. And so our heart is working in both of these spirals. Well, so instantaneously, just by being present, it's taking enough of what it needs from the past and enough of what it needs from the future. But like you were saying, if we go too far out, right, because the heart just needs a little bit from the past, right? Just needs a little bit from the future to just help bridge things logically together, to help create a coherent, right? We wouldn't want too much change. Instantly we feel bliss, the world becomes heaven, but as soon as we have one negative thought, the whole world is crashing down and burning, right? So we need that balance. The heart needs just a little bit, and that's kind of how it operates, is it takes just a little bit. But if we just remain present, we don't even have to worry about even that small amount of the future and the past, because our heart does it naturally.
Love that. So I think that we have. I like the philosophy. I'm a deep thinker. I like the science of it. But how do we apply these things and the practical takeaways? So let's go in the first one here.
Yeah. So this first part here is just setting the tone for the takeaways. Is that life is more about what is happening inside of us. And so we just read all of these Bible quotes. And it's important to remember that our heart, our mitochondria, our world is working together and is listening to this inner song that our heart is always beating towards, right? We can think of our heart as like playing a song, and it's attracting in all of these things in our life. And we've gone into the science and we've gone into the Bible and all of that. But how we practically apply this is we just have to think of it as always playing a song. And so the Bible teaches us the power of ourselves, and it teaches us that this present moment is where all of our power is. It's where we can sing the loudest. It's when we can sing in coherence. It's when we're singing the right tune. It's when our heart is joyfully beating to the beat of this world, right? So we need to cherish that, and we need to guard that. And so all of these practices are going to kind of be, okay, what can we do using everything that we've learned in the science and the Bible, right? But it's important to remember that main concept of our body is always listening to the now moment. Our mitochondria, our heart, everything is listening to us. And there's many, many Bible verses that we just went over. It's hard to break up these patterns. And so if we can start to root things in routines, we can start to always bring ourselves back into the present moment. Okay, it hits a certain time of the day or whatever. We have these triggers that allow us to get back into gratitude. And so one of the first things is we can just start our day with gratitude. As soon as we wake up, if we can always remind ourselves, and if we need a big poster on our wall or a big post-it note on the lamp or whatever, and gratitude, boom, do that. It's important because we need to guard our thoughts, because everything that we do, our body will tell us, I don't really need that. I don't need to really put a post-it note on my phone before I look at my phone because I just want to check something real quick, right? And it's important that taking at least 5 breaths slowly and deeply, and one of the best ways to feel gratitude is to start to visualize light coming from your heart. And this just allows you to get in the state of gratitude easier. A lot of us, we don't know what gratitude kind of feels like, or maybe we have a future expectation of a result. If we just focus on our heart filling with light, you naturally get in a state of deep gratitude. And so this kind of tunes the rest of your day for gratitude. All of a sudden, you'll have more and more things happening that's in gratitude, but it's kind of this proactive step. Even if I have a lot going on, even if I know that day is going to be challenging, maybe there's things that I don't want to do, and there's hard jobs and difficult circumstances and conversations that I don't want to have. If I can approach it with gratitude, everything will get easier. Everything starts to work out a little bit easier as well. So the next thing that we can do is we talked about how the body is biological in nature, how it's electrical in nature, and it needs all these minerals to get into coherence, and the body needs certain things, right? So the next thing that we can do is start to remineralize the body. So every day we lose a little bit of nutrients. Now, typically we're replacing those as well, and if we're replenishing nutrients faster than we're losing them, we have nothing to worry about. But if in times of particular stress, we're definitely losing nutrients faster than we're replacing them. And this is especially important if you think you don't have time to do these things. It's kind of that old quote, you should meditate for at least 5 minutes a day, but if you don't think you have time, then you should meditate for an hour. And so this is where grounding, sunlight, and drinking water with sprinkles of sea salt. So these 3 simple things, and it can be 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be anything that takes a bunch of your time and starts to take away from what you need to do in the day. But we all have the 5 minutes that we can spare, especially because it's giving to us more than it's going to be taken away.
Certainly, the 5 minutes, and then just another example is the stoplight. So like everybody has to be at a stoplight during the day, and so if you take that stoplight opportunity to go into gratitude, thoughts of gratitude, then that's strong enough to be able to carry you to the next moment, right? And so find those spots, find the spot, and if it's not 5 minutes, it's breathing, 5 breaths, right? 5 minutes, 5 breaths. All these things are just about resetting the mind, body, and the soul so that you can get back into the flow, the coherence of life. Yeah,
exactly. And these are all things that are going to be more on the free side to do, right? It just takes time and focus and attention. And it doesn't matter where we are in life, and that's why I wanted to structure these things, because, of course, some other people, they might be able to hop in their hyperbaric chamber and cold plunge first thing in the morning, right? But at the same time, if they're not in that state of gratitude, if they're just looking at it like a chore, it's not going to help them either. And so oftentimes it's not about what we do, it's about who we are being.
One thing, and so by remineralization and sprinkling the sea salt into the water. So I put the Baja sea salts from the Baja Peninsula into the water, and it's supposed to be a high mineral content. And so my dad watches me do this, and he says, you shouldn't be putting that much salt into your body. And so can you comment on, the last generation had a lot of beliefs related to eggs and cholesterol and all these things that, turned out to probably not be so true. Everything has a little bit of truth, but maybe it's not the whole truth. So is there anything to be said about overdoing it with, don't go to McDonald's and eat a hamburger is an easy one. Don't take the salt that's going to destroy your body systems. But what's the difference between too much salt or salt overload and, sprinkling sea salt in your water in the morning?
Yeah. So, the body is well attuned, and it becomes real simple. If you took a half a cup of salt, it would taste so salty. Your body would be rejecting it pretty easily, right? And so if your body is accepting it and using it, it wants more salt. It's not something that we need to worry about, that everybody has a certain amount that we need to do. There's no strict regulations because everybody is leaching different minerals in different ways. And so because we all have different thoughts, we all have different actions that we've done during the day, right? And so if you're somebody who's exercising a lot or using a lot of these salts in different ways, right? If your body is accepting it, maybe it's tasting good, it's readily dissolved, but if you feel like you're having to force it down, well, then it's too much, right? But if it's readily accepted, then you're completely fine.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. So let's say we started our day with gratitude, we just remineralized our body. What's the next biggest thing that takes all of us out, especially in the year 2025? It's overstimulation. And so this is one where we need to be proactive, because overstimulation, once we're overstimulated, that default mode network, it completely takes over. We're going to just, it's not that we're trying to get out of coherence. We're just going to simply forget to be in coherence. Coherence is one of those, being in the present, it's one of those things that we actively have to remind ourselves to do, because as soon as we forget it, there's nothing in our outside world that's just going to be an instant trigger unless we make it an instant trigger. And so overstimulation is one of the biggest vices that we have in modern day, because it steals our energy, it steals our attention, and it places it elsewhere, not in the present moment, not in gratitude. It speeds up our bodily rhythm. And so we lose coherence if we're not in the present moment. And so, for example, if somebody is struggling with caffeine ingestion, right? We know that stimulants can cause overstimulation. Well, even just swapping an energy drink for a green tea can be a powerful first step. Or let's say you even want to still drink the energy drink. Maybe taking some sea salt and mineral water prior to drinking it. All of these things are going to be small steps that start to reduce the impact. But as soon as we start just listening to our cravings, it's not something that we can build on. So we just want to set something that we can build on. So some of the other biggest ways that we have overstimulation is our phone, screens. Sexual desires can certainly take over a man or woman's thoughts very easily if we let them. Stimulants that we were just talking about, drugs, processed foods, and actually even negative emotions, because it can feel good to be angry about something. That wasn't my fault, right? Now you don't feel the blame and the responsibility and the accountability. You can say, it was that other guy's fault for cutting me off. Of course I'm angry. I'm just angry because that happened. I'm not an angry person, right? But we can start to take a step back, and this is where we have to be really honest with ourselves. This is probably going to be one of the hardest steps, is where am I overindulging too much? Where am I overstimulating myself? And we all have different vices, but this is the one. And our body knows, our heart knows, you all have something that maybe you feel slightly guilty about, slightly shameful about. And this is one where it's accept yourself and start to build on it in a small way to whatever capacity you can do. And don't judge that, like if you were doing the energy drinks, right? Don't judge if you had one today. Add another action to it, right? Or swap the green tea, add some sea salt, even a smaller action, do some push-ups, take some deep breaths. It's okay, but we just want to get back into the state of building versus overstimulating even more to avoid our overstimulation. And now you get in a loop where it's you can go days and weeks sometimes.
Bringing up each one of those examples, the first thing, there's so many people have, the stories that they tell. I can't give up my coffee in the morning, right? And so, if there's anything in your life that you don't want to give up, that's probably the first thing you should look at giving up for a day, give it up for 2 days, or allow yourself to have the mental stressor of not doing the same thing that you're doing every single day, just to break the pattern and make yourself a stronger person, right? So if it's coffee, great. If it's porn, and porn is one of the worst things that you could possibly do for so many different reasons, relationships and overstimulation and things like that. But if you're someone that's addicted to porn, then don't look at porn for the first day and give yourself that reward, and try to do it for 2 days, and try to do it for 6 days, and try to do it for the rest of your life. And so the opportunity to just simply change the story about where you're at for things like the stimulants, the phone, right? The phone, especially if you're, anybody that has any kind of theory of brain science related to this stimulation on phones, do not pick up your phone and use your phone first thing in the morning. Similar to caffeine, right? Huberman does a lot of work on caffeine and whether it's good or bad for you. But if you wake up and start your day with caffeine, then you haven't given your body the capability to get through the cortisol cycles or something, or you're overstimulated with cortisol before you have the capability to process it. And I don't know the science exactly, but maybe we could talk about that in one of those episodes. But the opportunity is to delay caffeine until at least an hour and a half from when you wake up, so that you can get through those chemical processes after you're in the morning. And then if you delay that, then you conceptually don't have the afternoon crash of the caffeine that so many people have to deal with. Yeah. So getting rid of those habits, even temporarily, allow you to see the space, have the mental clarity that there's other ways to do this, and give you the strength to find better paths.
Absolutely. I love what you said. If it hurts to give up, yes, that's what we need to look at. And I also think it's important to remember too that people get into addictions for a reason. And so if you do have a tough time giving up the coffee, or a really tough time giving up the porn, and sometimes it's just about reducing the stimulation of it, because oftentimes it starts out, I had a coffee, then maybe you have 2 this day, and whatever. We don't have any structure. So oftentimes you can just start measuring it. Okay, I'm gonna pour 1 ounce less of coffee. Maybe I can't give up the full cup of coffee, right? But I'm gonna pour 1 ounce less, right? Or maybe somebody knows that they're struggling with a porn addiction, right? And now they're in, and this one's particularly damaging, right? But maybe they say, I'm going to look at the porn, but I'm not going to touch myself. I'm not going to do these other things. And we don't need to get into the details of that. But even reducing it in some way, or adding in a beneficial action, because now you have more energy the next day to tackle the problem. And we don't always need to tackle the full problem, because that's oftentimes how we get stuck in those loops, is like, well, I didn't feel like I could quit today, and you're not going to feel like you can quit tomorrow, and you're not changing all of these things. And now your thoughts are going towards, I feel guilty and shameful. Now you're going to eat guilty and shameful foods. And now all of a sudden your life is just starting to be in chaos. And so that's when you just have to be honest with yourself, to your vices. Be completely honest to yourself. You don't even need to share it to anybody else, but be honest with yourself. What are you struggling with? And what are some physical action that I can take or reduce to reduce that stimulation?
Just last point, because you brought up the idea of no judgment. It's forgive yourself. We're about to talk about forgiveness, but in those moments, you have the capability to decide that I'm going to be something different than I am today, right? And so today, forgive yourself for being what you are or what you don't appreciate about yourself today, and then decide to take those little baby steps, and it allows you to create a new future. And so let's talk about self-forgiveness.
Yeah, so self-forgiveness is kind of the concept. No matter how smart we are, no matter how much we know, and hopefully everybody's learning a little bit, but I'll slip out of coherence all the time, right? You'll slip out of coherence all the time. We all do. This is a part of being human. And we want to have the energy stores to kind of mitigate this, right? And so this is where we want to have radical self-compassion and compassion for others throughout the day. and rooting ourselves back into the present moment with even a small action like straightening your posture. Maybe you sit up a little bit straighter, right? But these things are just instant forms of gratification, or instant forms of self-forgiveness. Sorry, not gratification. But all of a sudden you start to feel a little bit better too, because you're breaking that loop. And when we have the energy stores, when we're sitting in a nice strong posture, well, we're going to have a little bit stronger thoughts to not give into a lot of the temptations and the overstimulations and the vices that we have. Sometimes just taking a few breaths and jumping 5 times, maybe that gives you the energy to not give in, but oftentimes it starts to seep at the margins. All of a sudden your posture starts to go, your breathing starts to collapse a little bit. Now you don't have as much oxygen, you don't have as much energy, and now it's harder to fight those temptations. It's harder to fight those vices. And so when we have self-forgiveness, we're never beating ourselves up. We're not staying in that loop, because even feeling shameful and guilty, right? Why were you naked? It starts to hurt ourselves. So we can proactively remember to remineralize and ground ourselves in our breaths and straighten our posture anytime we want. And this gives us a little bit of energy, and it gives us that self-forgiveness that we need to get back into coherence. It's not beating ourselves up because we got out. It's just reminding ourselves to get back in.
100%. And just along the lines of, running low on energy and figuring out a way to revitalize that energy, I have a routine. And so I drink a mushroom hot tea in the morning with some sea salt. And so that's the beginning. And that gives me, an hour and a half of liquids that I need in order to kind of get the day going. And then I'll switch over to coffee. And then I'll drink coffee through, this thing. I just continue to add water to it. So it becomes, very watered down coffee, iced coffee. And then by the end of the, let's say, 2 o'clock, I've basically gone through an entire, Yeti of water with the coffee, and that's when I work out. And so that allows me to reset the chemicals in my body, and I'm about to pick up my kids. So I need that extra burst of energy in order to pick up my kids and be mentally present for my children. But then I get towards the end of the night, and they might be having a hard day, or there might be some conflict going on, and now all of a sudden I'm drained again, and I walk past the pantry and there's all these cookies in the pantry, or I walk past the freezer and there's this ice cream in the freezer, and so I find myself without discipline, when I'm in low energy, having significantly less discipline to keep myself from eating the things that I know are going to, not let me sleep very well at night, and I know they're going to cause me more problems, but I can't resist because I don't have the energy to do so. So I liked how you suggested just 5 jumps, or the breath, or whatever those things are. Sitting up and getting your posture will give you the mental strength, because these tiny little actions create domino effects. They the butterfly effect, and the tiny little action, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And bringing that back to coherence, it's like, well, the person with this amazing posture who's jumping, you start to tell yourselves, like, this person wouldn't even want ice cream. Right. And that's exactly how your mitochondria respond as well. They put you in a state of coherence with the person with great posture, the person who did the jumping jacks. And now all of a sudden you might say, okay, I'm good with water and salt. And now it becomes not even an energy equation or whatever, right? It just becomes like, oh, that's just who I'm being. It's easy. And so I love that, Dustin. Meditating on the feeling that you desire. So we all know that, especially for any families out there, that circumstances can be hard, that life can be hard. And taking time throughout our day to connect with our breath and meditate on the new feelings of what we desire is going to be essential for change, because we need at least some time every day to start to actively put it towards change, because we're going to be fighting a lot of fires in life. All of us, every one of us, fights fires. That's one of the constants in life, is that there will be growth, there will be change, and oftentimes change is very, very uncomfortable, right? And so when we wish to create a change in our life, we have to create a whole new future. And this means the way that we speak, the way that we carry ourselves. Your new future is going to have a certain new posture as well, new sensations in your body, all of it, our actions, our environments. And so Meditation is like if we're taking a scattered light, like maybe it's just like the sunlight, and we're putting a magnifying glass, and we're really trying to spotlight a certain area that we want to change. And oftentimes during meditation, this can be a great time to feel the new feelings, because like we said, if we want to shift to a new life, we have to create, everything has to change. Environment, actions, words, posture, all of it has to change. And so meditation is just a great way to tell your mitochondria, to tell your heart that, okay, it's okay to start creating this new body, right? And that new body can also help root us into these feelings, right? And so meditation's that way. It allows the mitochondria to relax and start to repair. It allows the heartbeat to slow down and to start to get into more rhythm. And so even creating these small changes, it starts to ripple and reverberate into every other change.
Definitely.
Even if it looks small.
Yeah, I don't have anything. I mean, I've brought meditation into a practice for the past 5 years, and for those that say, "Oh, meditation, it's hard," it is hard, and it's hard to let your body be in a peaceful state. It's hard to be at rest. It's hard to consciously breathe, but in the end, that's all you really have to do. Is breath work is meditation, and so if you can focus on the box breathing, 4 in, hold 4 out, hold 4, right, and so that just those practices allows you to reset. Whether you believe you're doing anything at that moment or not, it will do something. And so get into the practice, and the practice will, if you build it, they will come. You get in the practice and it will come. So yeah. Okay. Let's go to the next one.
Yeah. Well, willingly do hard things, right? Well, when we take on willingly extra stress, just as much as we can tolerate, right? Because we don't want to overstress ourselves, but we allow more light in. The body listens, it responds, and this is why activities like fasting, meditation, lifting weights, they're all things like you were saying, they are hard to do, but we want to do the hard things. We want to proactively do these things because, and some other examples are consistent sleep schedules, detaching from vices is going to be hard, setting aside time to walk 1, 2, 3 hours a day. We know these things are beneficial for us, and they allow you the silence to listen to your body, to listen to your heart, and now to fully be present. Because when things are hard, it forces you into the present moment in a way. When you're fasting and your stomach is hungry, okay, now you're kind of forced in the present moment. You're not thinking about, it's going to be so cozy when I eat my next meal. I'm not hungry at all. When you're lifting the weights, you're not, you're deep in a squat, and it's taking all of your energy to focus on that squat. You're not thinking about, it's just going to be so comfy mid squat to just be sitting on my couch, right? You're not thinking about those things. No, you're fully present, right? And that's why doing a lot of these hard things is it's like a bodily reset that can kind of force your mind when you start to realize, wow, I was thinking so negatively and I couldn't seem to get out of it. Well, oftentimes because you're trying to force thoughts into an incoherent body, and we can't force the thoughts respond to our vibration. And so if we willingly go do these hard things, now it becomes easier to the body, the logical mind can make that link. Okay, yeah, we were just in that deep squat and it was not fun, but now I can be grateful just to stand. Because otherwise, without doing these hard things, you'd be like, grateful just to stand. Okay, like, I get it. That sounds corny. That sounds cheesy. But go do a hard set of squats or go cycle for an hour at max intensity, and now we are grateful just to stand and rest, right? It becomes less of this corny line, right? Like, just stand and feel straight posture. And now it's something that you can actually feel, and you're bridging that feeling into the present moment.
The stories that we tell ourselves, right? It's over and over, the same thing over and over.
Exactly.
And so that's what's fun about these things is that there's all kinds of tricks and there's all kinds of ways to trick yourself into going into these states. But in the end, it's the same thing over and over. You have to have a mental image of what you want. And when you have that mental image of what you want, you will gravitate towards that mental image because that's the vibrations that you're creating. That's fun. And then the idea of doing the hard things, you can't have a perspective of good times without knowing its opposite, right? And so, what do they say? Good times create weak men create hard times create strong men create good times, right? So that cycle of life. And so you have to have those hard things in order to find the good times. You have to stand up and you have to work hard in order to find the peace, the goodwill, the opportunities. But when you do, it creates the good times.
Exactly. Yeah. And when we have the good times and the easy times, and if we just constantly take the easy action, it's going to be easier for me to not be in that squat as much. It's going to be easy for me to, maybe I don't even go to the gym. Maybe it's just easier for me to look at my phone. Maybe it's easier for me to, I don't really feel like meditating today. And all of a sudden we start to create these patterns and these loops where, because we've always chosen the easy thing, well, by contrast, even now a thing that shouldn't be that difficult now seems hard. Oh, I need to go to the store to get groceries now? Well, that's hard, right? But maybe if you were forcing yourself to go every day and you say, oh, you only need to go once a week, well, that's easy, right? Like everything starts to get calibrated. And so if we're constantly forcing ourselves to even do a few small hard things, I'm not saying go make your life super hard, right? We don't have to be hardcore. Some people fall in love with it, but we do need to be intentional, and we do need a balance of, and this is kind of going to get into our last part is reflection. But when we're reflecting on our day, and it's just about being honest. Did I mainly choose easy things? Did I have a balance of hard things at least? Or let me just be honest with myself. Let me forgive myself. Let me apply everything else that we've been talking about. And your heart, your brain, your body, and the way that we're ultimately connected to God, if you do these things, you will start to course correct. Opportunities will start to come because they are forced to. That is the way that our world works.
That's right. Along the lines, yesterday I completed a 24-hour fast, and before I completed the 24-hour fast, I went, I did, a bunch of core body, core work, and then I went mountain biking right afterwards. So I'm on 24-hour fast, 2 hours of exercise on top of that 24-hour fast, and my body's like, even before I went and started working out, I'm thinking about it. I'm in the present. I'm thinking about how difficult that is. And so just that struggle allows you to create something new, right? And so from the phoenix rises the ashes. And so for the past few days I had been doing my meditation at night, and I just wasn't getting into it. I'd stop in the middle and start texting, here any distraction would allow me to pop out of it, and so, but last night, I had the best meditation I've had in a really, really long time. And I believe it was because of the struggles that I went through in that day and the intentional purpose of why was I letting myself be so hungry and during the day. And then coming out of that as a reward system for my own body, I had the best meditation and, had a beautiful moment in that meditation. And I think it was because of the drivers of me saying, I'm going to put in the work. And so you put in the work, you get the reward.
Exactly. Yeah. And when we forget, like you were saying, when we forget to remind ourselves of the benefits that we're doing, if we're just doing these things to beat ourselves up, well, logical mind starts to overtake us. It starts to overpower us. We start to forget the benefits. And then it's like, okay, yeah, meditation seems good, but it also kind of seems like a chore right now. And you know what? The brain is wired in a way that it's going to make the decision which it thinks benefits it the most. So it's saying, okay, texting has a better benefit right now than remaining in the meditation, right? That's oftentimes what stops us from doing things is because we forget about the benefits. we would all work out and meditate and fast, right? But it's hard. Our body doesn't want to do these hard things, which naturally stress us out. If it's completely forgetting the benefits, otherwise it's just telling yourself like, yeah, why am I doing all these hard things at all? You forget your why, you forget why you're doing it, and it takes you out of the moment, and now you're just perceiving pain. And why does the brain want to be in pain? Something that takes me out of it, something that's maybe enjoyable, something that's easier. And so, last one for our listeners here, and all of these things, again, you'll notice that they're all free. But it requires character building, because these things, while they are free, and we want them to be free, it's not necessarily going to be easy. Being self-honest with yourself, this is something that doesn't change whether you're rich or poor or whatever it might be. You still need to be honest with yourself. These are still things, no matter your circumstances, these are things that you can apply. And that's kind of how Dustin and I designed these things today. But reflection. So compassionately review your day for situations that did not go according to how you wished. This one's kind of important, because if there's anything that didn't flow, it needs just a little bit of attention at the end of the day. And review where we could have taken actions maybe a little bit differently. Oh, I wanted to give up the coffee, but it was just way too much for me. Like, I ended up drinking 2, and then I had a stressful meeting, and I needed a third one, whatever it might be. Review it with compassion. Don't beat yourself up. This is just an honest self-audit. You don't need to share this with anybody else. And you could say, okay, maybe I could have taken 1 ounce less. Maybe I could have remineralized prior. Maybe I could have chosen a different drink. Maybe I knew this stressful meeting was coming up, and maybe it wasn't a good idea to put myself in an accelerated state before this meeting. Now the meeting went poorly, right? And it's just a compassionate, what could I have done different, right? So when something didn't go our way, when we wish it to be different, what is just one action? And that's a simple review. So the simple review prior, and we can go into the science of this in another episode as well, but it seeds your subconscious with new thoughts and actions for the next day. And when you review it compassionately, no matter what happened, remember it's perfect. It was a perfect day. It's all happening for us. But is there something that I could have changed, right? We need to take that first step. It's all of the principles that we talked about today in the Bible. And so we need to have compassion. We need to be diligent. We don't want to let our thoughts wander into negativity at this time, because oftentimes what happens at night is we'll often start to beat ourselves up. Oh, that meeting went poorly. I did drink this, like, I'm just so undisciplined. I told myself I was going to do this and I didn't. And the meeting went poorly, and like, now I got to be perfect tomorrow. Otherwise, like, I can't believe I let myself do that again. We need to approach it with compassion. This is not a time to beat yourself up, because again, all of these thoughts that we have prior to where we go to bed is going to start to seed our subconscious. And if we're telling ourselves these things, oh, I'm a failure, I'm undisciplined, I can't stick to a routine, I can't do what I'm going to say. Well, now it doesn't matter what you tell yourself, what you're going to do or say, or whatever change you want to make, because you just told yourself some very powerful negative overriding thoughts that are going to rewire your neurons and rewire your brain while you're sleeping. Melatonin's going to come in and start to change your neural pathways.
In the theta state, right? And so, like, you want to manifest in the theta state, and yeah,
right. And so this is one where you can practice having compassion, because we will all make mistakes. It's normal. Things won't always go our way. And so this is where, if you can start to practice having compassion for yourself, all of a sudden you can focus on the solution. And when you're focused on the solution and improving, it's everything in the Bible. Whoever has, if I have improvement, I will be given more, right? We can tie this back to any of the statements that we discussed. But this is a time in the theta state, like we were talking about, when the mitochondria and the heart are especially listening to the body, because the mind and body are more still, right? And this is oftentimes, a lot of people have trouble sleeping just because simply their body isn't still. Maybe they ate very late in the day, and they still have all this food and digestive processes, right? Or they never set aside time to reflect at all, and their mind is still racing, and it's creating this anxiety because there's these unresolved problems, and the mind just simply wants you to acknowledge it with compassion. Remember, everything's happening for us. It's all good. But let me just say, okay, what were those few changes that I can make? And now life just becomes, okay, I'm just taking another bite, right? I'm taking another bite. I'm walking the next step. I'm doing the next action that I need to do rather than focusing on these far future problems. Oh, I want to be here. I want to be a multi-billionaire that's doing all these travels and have this amazing social circle and be in perfect health and have these perfect kids, right? And we're not paying enough respect to the current moment, which is always listening.
That's right. So then just in the last practical application for that, I run a series of companies. I founded a series of companies, and so I have a complicated business life, and so I try to close out meetings and close out my day by writing down what just happened, right? And so that reflection, the capability to close the loop, allows you to mentally release it because you've already gone through that mental process. You don't have to at 9:30, 10, whatever time you go to bed, start thinking about all the things that you didn't finish in that day, because at 5 o'clock or whenever you end your workday, you went through and said, yep, nope, yep, nope, yep, nope. And you're mentally organizing those things so that you can get it off your plate. Similarly, if you're someone who ruminates or overthinks, have a journal next to your bed so that you can just pull out the journal, and when a thought pops in your head, make it a practice to write it down, and then you can release that thought from your head, because the reason that you're ruminating is because you don't want to forget, or you don't want to drop the ball, or you don't want to, whatever the circumstances or the downline implications are that are risk from your perspective. If you can mentally release that, then you can fall asleep. Then you can get into that reflective gratitude state. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's kind of the concept of flow, right? Like if we only input food into our body and we're not expending it with output, well, our body starts to slow down and get fat, right? And it's likewise, our mind will get fat if we're just constantly reading things and listening to things and inputting everything during the day. And like you said, journaling, that's a way just to create a little bit of output, right? It's kind of like exercising. If we've ate, now we want to go take some action with it, right? And that journaling can be a very powerful way to just let the thoughts flow. It keeps our mind agile.
Well, I appreciate that we were able to communicate all these things. So I think that you said it best. You don't need money to jump up and down or do push-ups or reset your brain or practice gratitude or get some sea salts. You don't need, this isn't a high resource thing in order to take the first actions. Now, I've been in practice for 5 years. I'm taking a lot more practice actions than many people will start at the beginning of their stages, but start somewhere. And that one thing will change to two things, which Fibonacci sequence, butterfly effect,
2 to 3. The jumps start getting larger and larger. 3 to 5. Now it's a step of 2. 5 to 8. Now it's 3. Pretty soon you're going to be taking 1,000 to 2,000, 2,000 to 4,000.
Well, I appreciate you helping people like myself who doesn't have the scientific brain that needs those practical applications, needs to understand how it ties to my daily life and practice, and I appreciate you going through these details.
Yeah, thanks, Dustin. Hopefully our listeners got a lot out of that and can start to change their lives today in this moment.
The present moment. Today is the day.